What's up, guys? My name is Damien. I'm going to teach you guys how to solder today. So to start off, let's go over some of the supplies you need. First things first, you're going to need your soldering iron. I got a tip attached to this handy dandy box which can control the temperature at what the tip is at. Next, you're going to need your solder. We got these nice rolls over here. Then you got your solder sucker in case you mess up. Click the button, heat the solder, push the button, sucks up the solder. You got your tip cleaner for your soldering iron for when you're done soldering, so you can, next time you solder, you have good clean solders. Then you got your wire cutters so you can strip your wires. And then I have a vise so that when I'm soldering my wires, I don't burn my fingers. So I've already started and soldered one piece. Now I'm just going to solder them together. So I'm going to strip the wires just a little bit off. Don't need a lot, but try to get a decent amount so that you have enough room to solder to. Tighten up my vise. And I'm just going to kind of mesh these wires together, or touch them together so that when I solder they will stick, so that I don't have to touch it too much with my fingers. Just make sure that's good there. Alright, so first things first, safety always. Just so if you're soldering you don't get wet solder on the wires and then it springs back and doesn't hit your eyes. That'll leave a mark. So I have my soldering iron set to 650 degrees. Usually 550 to 650 is a good range. You don't want it too hot because then it's just dangerous. Too low and then you'll start melting your solder. So the first thing you're going to do when you're soldering is you're going to take some solder, and this is a process called tinning. So you're just going to take some solder, run it on the tip of your soldering iron. This is hot, so it will start melting the solder right away. Then you're just going to kind of get a damp sponge, so kind of like run it under water and then wring it out, and then the tip gets all nice and shiny. That's called tinning the tip. So you got your solder in one hand, your soldering iron in the other. Usually use your dominant hand, the one you use to write with the most. So then now that I have my wires together right here, I'm simply going to put the soldering iron underneath the wires in this case. Some cases it's better to put it on if you need pressure to hold them together, but these wires are pretty sturdy so they're staying together on their own. So I'm just going to go like this for a little bit and kind of heat those wires up, and then start to put the solder on the wires. You just kind of trickle it in there, and once you get the solder on, it'll still look kind of wet. It'll still be hot and you can move it. Once you put the solder on, it'll kind of go from very shiny to more dull, and then you have a soldered connection. So if you try to pull it apart, it's not going to pull apart. Chances are you're going to break the wires before you break the solder. And then when you're done, just kind of clean off the tip, put it back, and that's how you solder. When you're done with the soldered connection, if it's going to be actually used for electrical purposes, you're going to want to put some kind of insulator on there, such as heat shrink tubing or electrical tape. Alright, so now I'm going to show you how to use a heat shrink gun with heat shrink tubing. So I already have my soldered piece here. I'm just going to slide it over, kind of put the solder joint in the middle of this section here. Then you get like a heat gun. You don't want to use like a normal hair dryer. That's not really powerful enough. They do make actual heat guns that blow heat, kind of similar, but not for the same purposes at all. So you're going to turn it on, it's going to heat up, and then you're just going to kind of point it at the heat shrink tubing, and you'll see the tubing start to shrink. The tubing will just kind of shrink and mold to the wire. Alright, so now that I put the heat shrink tubing on, you can hook this up to any electrical connection you want, knowing that the connection will transfer from one wire to the next and be properly insulated as if it was one wire. So that's it for this week's video. See you next time.